Bonnie McDonald, and I'm the president and CEO of a nonprofit here called Landmarks Illinois, and we help people save places that matter to them in their communities. And you might wonder, what is the through line that is connecting Danielle and me? And I think what I just heard is that once you see something, you can't unsee it. Once you see structural racism and structural inequities in what you do, you cannot turn a blind eye to it. And so that's what I'm talking about today, is what Daniel just talked about in the education system, I talk about in the built environment and land use in Chicago. And Daniel shared his story, which is a difficult, beautiful story, and I'll get a little bit to mine in the end, but I want to talk about Chicago's story first. How many of you are proud Chicagoans? Most of you, right? That's every Chicagoan. So I just want to say, Chicago is really at the crossroads of all of the important stories in this place that we live. Both the indigenous home and the colonized home. It is the center of these stories. And those stories are embedded in the places that are surrounding us, all around us. And I mean, do you know some of the facts that we heard from Daniel, I want to share with you. This city of Chicago has some of the most buildings in all of the United States. We have 500,000 buildings in this city. And of those, 90% of them are over 50 years old. 2/3 of them are almost 80 years old. And what does that mean? Is that they need reinvestment. They need our attention. But more than that, they tell our stories. They tell long-standing stories of the generations of people who have come to this place, and that their stories are told through these places. And that is the work that I get to do, is to work side by side with people to help them save the places that tell their stories. So first and foremost, I want to, that's me, okay. That's my landing slide. So your story matters. Places are about stories, really. We think of them in bricks and mortar, but really what they are is a vessel for our memories and for the layered stories that they tell. And I wanted to show you today, through this narrative, some of the places that are telling our stories all around the city, and the people who are working hard to make sure those stories are not erased. Because we are in a moment of erasure. We are in a moment where we are trying to erase people from the story of this nation. Have you ever anybody seen this place? Robert's Temple, Church of God in Christ. It is located on South State Street. And this is where Mamie Till Mobley held the open casket funeral for her son, who was brutally murdered in Mississippi. And it changed the face of the world at this point. Robert's Temple is a story of resistance. It is the story of persistence. It is the story of resilience. And here, this place was designated by President Biden as a national monument. One of the last things that he did when he was in office in 2024. One of the first things that our new president did when he came into office was to undo most of the national monuments that were created, or to threaten to undo them. Because the best way to erase the people is to erase their story, to erase their culture, to erase their identity. We write people out of our story as a way so that we forget. Preservation is an act of resistance, and we don't talk about it that way. We don't think about saving places as an act of resistance and resilience and reparations. So that is the work that we are trying to do, to save this place and to make sure that the people and the story of this place are not erased from our history. And that is because, history is just story, right? History is just telling us about who we are. And we think of how many people hated their history class. You can admit it. I see you. History teachers, it's kind of boring, right? You learn these dates and places and names, and in the end, there's no context that's created because we don't tell a story around these places. Whereas, stories are about our identity. It's the way that we have learned our culture since the beginning of humankind, is telling oral histories. And the places are just another way. It's like a frozen memory. Like here, this is Arco de la Velita in a little village. And here, this place tells the story of the Mexican American community coming to Chicago, and also the Latina communities that have also populated Little Village, Pilsen, and all parts of our city. And what's important, why I bring this out to you, is that the work that I do is embedded with structural racism and structural inequities. And I'm trying to undo that because I've seen it and I can't unsee it. And this is a story of the success. This is what it's going to look like when we're done, changing the inequities in land use and in preserving places that are important, because this was identified by the community as a place that was important to them, that told their story. And they brought it to the city and said, we want this to be a landmark. We don't want this to ever be erased. We want this to be a memory that we celebrate. And it was designated a Chicago landmark, which means it cannot be demolished. And it was designed for that. This was built in 1991. It is the only structure that is listed as a designated landmark protected by the city of Chicago, the only one designed by a Mexican American architect. Right now, we have 0 designed by a woman. We have 1 designed by a Black American architect. So we have a long way to go to tell everybody's story, which is the story of this nation. More than that, I just want to say that the work we do in preservation is very precious. You know, we kind of make this work into museum-like culture. You know, we talk about the places, the bricks and mortar, or the importance of the window, or the importance of the doorknob, or, you know, it's not about the people who are there today. And that's really, the past is just there for us to use it today. It's about the present and the future. And what I want to say is, of those 500,000 buildings, we can do so much more with them if we think differently about them. Not museums, but places that are living, breathing for the future. Like West Pullman Elementary School was one of our closed Chicago schools, one of our 49 closed elementary schools that sat vacant, just like dozens of others that are still out there. It was reused as affordable housing. We are in the midst of an affordable housing crisis across the world. And this was one place that could be reused to house people in the community who needed it, seniors, and it's a way we can get housing to the marketplace faster when we reuse an existing building. Did you know that? We can actually create more affordable housing if we reuse existing places, because when we convert a school to housing, it actually adds to the overall supply, because that wasn't housing before. We can actually increase overall affordable housing when we reuse industrial buildings like this, when we reuse schools, when we reuse sacred places. So we have to think differently about our existing built environment, our historic built environment. Even more, they can help us to heal ourselves in a public health capacity. We don't think about places as public health. What's good for the health of our community? But 2 things in particular. Number 1 is saving existing places is a sustainable practice. 40% of all the carbon emissions in the world are created through the built environment, through the operation and construction of buildings. When we reuse existing buildings, we cut down on carbon emissions. We actually reuse the carbon that has already been taken out of the environment, as my designer friends know. So the more that we do that, the more we save the world, and the more we can focus on environmental justice, which I'll talk about at the end. But even more than that, there's the human element, the mental and physical health. So I bring up the National Public Housing Museum. Did y'all see that too? After 15 years, it opened. Thanks to Francine Washington, Sonny Fisher, at least Lee. But I wanted to bring this up because this is the last building, one of the last buildings remaining in what was our public housing community. We still have some of them left, but we demolished the vast majority through the plan for transformation. And in doing so, we displaced entire communities of people, networks of people, their families, their structures, their social structures, which was studied by Dr. Mindy Fullabov 20 years ago and called root shock. If you've not read this book, please go do it. What it essentially means is that we cause depression, mental illness, physical ailments when we displace people from their communities. So that is not about the built environment per se, but it's about what's housed in the built environment. Our communities are in the places that we live. You know, our communities and social fabric is about the places that we connect with each other. And so when we save places like this to tell the story of public housing, it's actually part of repairing that displacement of people, but it doesn't go far enough. We need to do far more to honor the role that public housing has played in our community to provide safe and human right to housing. This is what you might think of as preservation, and I wouldn't blame you. You know, it looks like a bunch of old houses and telling one story, and that's predominantly what it's been. It's just telling one group of people's stories, predominantly white men's stories, white wealthy men's stories. So this house is the Clark House. Some of you might have heard of it or visited in school. The Henry B. Clark House, it was called. The oldest house in Chicago. Well, this is the oldest colonizer's house in Chicago. But when I said Henry B. Clark, what's missing in that? Do any of you know? Catherine Clark. There was a woman involved in this too, and she actually had this house longer than her husband. But the people who had this house the longest were the Fords. Bishop Henry Louis Ford, Margaret Ford, and the Church of God in Christ, who actually saved this house. They bought it, they preserved it for over 50 years, and then they donated it to the city so that story could be told. But when you read the National Register nomination for this, it talks about Henry Clark, and that's it. Their paragraph is this big about their role in preserving this house. So we need to do a better job of telling everybody's history, women's, people of color, LGBTQ history, like this. This is the Henry Gerber House, which is one of the few National Historic Landmarks, which is our highest level of importance and designation, related to the LGBTQ community. This is where the Society for Human Rights was created, the first LGBTQ organization in the United States in 1924. Henry Gerber started it, he was a mail carrier, and he created a newsletter in his house there in Chicago and was arrested for it because it was seen as illegal to write about gay and lesbian rights at the time. He was jailed for that. So this tells that story, but you see very few of these. Stonewall, for example, which was just erased by the president, the history of Stonewall. We are not telling enough of these stories, and that's what I'm saying. Inequity is all around us. Only 8% of the stories that are told through our National Register, which is our highest level of honor for the places that tell our history, only 8% of the places listed tell the story of women, people of color, and the LGBTQ community combined. 8% of 93,000 places. We have so much work to do to make sure that our built environment not only tells our stories. Oh, sorry, I'm going to go back to Tanika. Some of you might know Tanika Lewis-Johnson. Yes. Social justice artist and photographer. And I bring her here because I'm going to show you 3 stories that are, this is what it's going to look like when we're successful at making this field actually work for people. Making it about what people want in their community, and that all the tools are available to everybody, which is not the way it is today. So this Tanika, she was trying to landmark the story of inequity in housing. You might know her Inequity for Sale project, which is about land sale contracts, legal theft of wealth from Black communities, and she was trying to landmark places that were related to this. She could not do that because she didn't qualify. The buildings didn't qualify as historic enough because they didn't have enough material still left to tell the story. I think we're smart enough to tell a story, right? To learn. So she just did her own thing. She said, I'm just gonna go landmark it myself. And she created these landmarkers, right? That's not how the system should work. The system should work for all of us. We should be able to use these tools. So we made a grant so she could make her own landmarker. But we can do better. Like the Aspire Center, which is just about to open in the Austin community, Austin Coming Together, which is reusing one of the closed Chicago public schools. It took 12 years for them to do this. If the work we're doing creates enough incentives that are accessible, creates the tools, the regulatory tools that are accessible, this should have been done in a year, not 12. So we need to make this work easier, more accessible, more equitable, more just. And that's what we're doing, is trying to tear it apart and rebuild it so that it is equitable. And this is the final one, All Hill Gardens, which is another public housing community at the south side. This picture in the center is Cheryl Johnson, the daughter of Hazel Johnson, the mother of environmental justice in the entire nation. And People for Community Recovery, which is the organization she started, focuses on housing equity, housing justice, and environmental justice, because this is the worst toxic donut hole in the entire city. And this community wanted to use another closed CPS school for a community center named for Hazel Johnson for Environmental Justice Center. And they were finally able to do that. This is a success story. They got the title from CPS just recently, and they were going to start the Environmental Justice Center named after Hazel Johnson, but they had to take the words environmental justice out of it to get a federal grant now. This is injustice in action, and we need to have resilience and fight for what we feel is fair, not only in schools. The gap is a discrimination gap. What I'm talking about is a discrimination gap in the built environment as well. And I wrote about this. This is my story, as I spent 5 years writing a book about this work on how we need to dismantle and reshape the work that we do in the existing built environment and helping people save the places that matter to them. It is a free resource. You can access it and read more about all of these topics and more. I hope that you will, because there's so much to tell you, and I only have 10 minutes to do it. So I'm going to say that here's my contact information. We can talk more afterward. I would love to hear your feedback and the stories that you have about this. And now I get the very happy honor of introducing Jamil, who is going to tell you more about his work.